Hello and welcome back. If you're new around here, my name is Heather. I talk about true crime, the supernatural, writing, books, and sometimes anything else that takes my fancy. Yesterday I did an entire year's worth of content, so who knows what's coming your way? I do. Subscribe. Definitely subscribe, in fact, because my partner has just reached the monetization threshold, which means he's doing much better at this than me, and we can't have that. So help me out, subscribe to the channel, help get me monetized so I can go to Disney. Today we're talking about Catherine Wilson, a serial poisoner, murderer, and scary lady. Over the course of her activities, it's thought that Catherine Wilson claimed over 9 victims during her time as a serial poisoner. She helped set the precedent that females are more likely to poison. Men tend to go for more hands-on murders, stab stab, shoot shoot, strangle strangle. Women tend to go a little bit more craftily, poison poison. We're cleverer that way. Violence doesn't always get you places, but cleverness gets you everywhere. And if you poison, you can't always detect it, especially during this time, 1800s, 19th century. DNA wasn't a thing, trace wasn't a thing. You could tell someone was poisoned by cutting them open and going, shit, that liver's busted. But you couldn't tell always what was the cause of the poison. You had the obvious ones, like cyanide. You can sort of look and go, uh-oh. But other types of poisons were hard to trace. This is one of them. All the way back in 1850, Catherine was a housekeeper to a bloke called Captain Peter Moyer, or Mauer. I have no idea how to say his name. It doesn't really matter. No one can tell me off, he's dead. He suffered quite badly with rheumatism, and a doctor had prescribed him medicine for this affliction. Because of his pre-existing condition, when he died suddenly after a 2-week-long mystery illness, it wasn't really looked at with any suspicion. Although the one thing that did flag up to the authorities was Catherine had managed to convince Peter to change his entire will so she was the sole beneficiary. Because of his pre-existing medical conditions and the strength of the medicine that he was prescribed, his death went down as an accidental overdose because he didn't know how much medicine he should be taking. After the funeral, Catherine pissed off to London. In London, Catherine started a relationship with a much younger man, Cougar. Masquerading as brother and sister, weird, they moved into the house of Mrs. Soames, a wealthy widow with several properties. I smell a target. Plot twist, Catherine got tired of James's heavy drinking and administered poison to him. A doctor visited, diagnosed him with a fever, and within 2 days of the doctor's visit, he was dead. Catherine managed to persuade authorities not to perform a post-mortem because James had a terrible fear of being cut open on the table and frightened that his dead body would somehow feel it. Boom, back to Mrs. Soames. While she was on holiday with her daughters, she was taken ill, apparently worried about the lack of money she suddenly had after she'd set up a loan for Catherine, and a lot of her silverware and possessions, including some of Catherine's, were burgled. She was nursed back to health by Catherine, and because she was nursed by Catherine, she died. Mrs. Soames's brother was confused as to how his sister had suddenly died penniless, but somehow Catherine had managed to get an IOU from Mrs. Soames for £10 and took some more money off her as well. After this, Catherine moved in with a Mrs. Jackson. Mrs. Jackson had withdrawn £120 from her bank account, and within 4 days after this, she was also dead. Mrs. Ann Atkinson was the aunt of James Dixon. Do you remember James? They posed as brother and sister even though they were in a relationship, and then she got bored of him and decided to poison him instead, and then pretended he was scared of post-mortems so they wouldn't find out that he was poisoned. Well, we're back with him again, but we're back with his aunt. So she came to stay with Catherine, and then Catherine sent an urgent telegram to her husband saying that she was gravely ill and he must come at once. He arrived, and within a day she was dead. Her money had also disappeared from her bank account. Large withdrawals had been made and she had no cash on her at the time of death. Everything that she had mysteriously disappeared somehow. Mrs. Sarah Carnell. We're here with somebody else now. An elderly woman who Catherine looked after. So Sarah had separated from her husband and was very, very vulnerable. So Catherine saw a target, swooped in, and managed to convince Sarah to make Catherine her sole beneficiary in the will. Instead of the normal poison she had used on Sarah, she used sulfuric acid. She put it in her cup of tea, and that was very, very noticeable. And Sarah spat it out immediately. Catherine tried to get her to drink again. She spat it out again. The sulfuric acid in the tea had burned holes in her carpet, so she was immediately very, very concerned. Why is my tea burning holes in my fucking floor? Catherine blamed the chemist and said they gave her sulfuric acid instead of the medicine that Sarah needed, so she got away with it for now. But she was kept in police custody while they exhumed the bodies of everyone else she had been in contact with who had mysteriously died. She was first tried on the case of Mrs. Soames, which was the easiest case to get her. After all, the punishment for killing someone is being hung, and you can only go down for that once. So it didn't really matter about pinning the rest of the murders on her. As long as they got her for one, she would then be executed and no more serial poisoner around London. She obviously denied everything, but an expert on poisonings were the one that sent her down. The judge had to find her guilty to set an example for everyone, because people had servants back in those days, and he wanted the people of London to be comfortable with the servants serving them food. No one would be able to sit down for a meal in peace if they thought there was a serial poisoner going around. So she was made an example of, so other servants were put back in their place. She showed no emotion during the trial, and while she was on the day of her execution, she visited church twice, but other inmates said she slept sound as a baby in Newgate prison before they took her up, which is a little bit sus. She was due to be hung on the 20th of October at 8 a.m. That is my boyfriend's birthday, 20th of October. I let him know when I found this out during my research. I said, "Oh, someone was hung on your birthday, Babsy." He was like, "Oh, good, great." A crowd of 20,000 people showed up at her execution to watch the famous poisoner be punished for what she had done. Her last words were, "I am innocent." She obviously wasn't. She poisoned up to 9 people. That's not very innocent behaviour, if you ask me. She was the first female execution at Newgate Prison in 14 years. There's now a wax figure of her at Madame Tussauds in the Chamber of Horror. You know that bit where there's live actors and they jump out at you? I went to Madame Tussauds with my dad back when I was 18, just before I moved to uni, and I really wanted to go in the Chamber of Horrors bit, but it said live actors, and I thought, oh, that's enough to make sure I don't go in there. Because I love actors, I am one myself, but in a scare zone where they jump out at you and scare you, not really my thing. I like actors, I like watching actors, I like knowing they're supposed to be there and not scaring me. If they're telling a story, yay, great. If they jump out at me with an axe and try and hit me in the face, not good. In fact, my most recent experience was in the London Dungeons. I went in to the queue, saw that there was going to be scare actors and ran away. I didn't even go in. And then I walked for an hour across London because there was some sort of protest going on, and that was really difficult because I was hiking across London in the rain, no idea where I was going, with a stranger. We were on a trip. The Drama Society was on a trip, and I was with a stranger. I'd never met him before. I knew he was in Drama Society, but he wanted to go in the same place as I did, so I hiked across London. Anyway, I don't like live actors. That's my point. That's the point of this story. I don't like scare actors. Although I really want to go to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal, but I'll have to grow a backbone. I'll stick with Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party for now. Anyway, subscribe to the channel so I can overtake Ethan and rub it in and get monetised and tell him to back off with his bragging rights. There is going to be a lot of content coming up over the next, well, I've planned it until the end of the year, really. I've got 2 videos a week. True Crime Tuesday, Supernatural Saturday, every week for the next God knows how long. I've planned it until the end of the year. And then I also have bonus content coming up, such as 31 Days of Halloween and Vlogmas. So there will be lots of extra murders, lots of extra supernatural, lots of fun with my boys, and a lot of wine being drunk. Because if I don't film in the day, I film in the evening and the bottle of wine comes out and things get fun. So subscribe. I'll see you later. Back on Saturday for a video on the Winchester Mystery House. Ooh, ghosties.